Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our next extravaganza. Welcome to Simon, our speaker this evening. I think there's about 60 of you on here this evening. We already know quite a lot about Brabazon. We did have a well-attended visit there. We're trying to remember the date, about 3 years ago, where we careered down the runway in our cars, went round the Brabazon hangars. A lot's changed since then. But since then, we've also given one of our coveted design awards to Aerospace Museum. So many of us know quite a lot about the development, but I felt it was quite important. It's such a big development right on the very boundary of Bristol and South Gloss. So we got in touch with YTL, and to our joy and amazement, Simon Fitton is here this evening. He's Technical Director of Planning with YTL, and he's going to talk for 35 minutes, Simon, I think, and explain what's happening up at Brabazon at the moment. Plenty of opportunity for any questions. And over to you, Simon.
Well, thank you, Simon, and good evening, everybody. Fantastic to see quite so many people here. So we're forever trying to preach our vision for Brabazon, so it's great to have so many people online tonight. Yeah, I'm Simon Fitton. I'm the Technical Director of Planning at YTL. I've been with YTL just over a year now, but before that I was Head of Planning at Alder King. As many of you will probably know, Alder King were instructed by BAE back in 2014 to progress the planning to get to a point of outline permission to then sell the site. The site was then sold to YTL in 2014. So I've had a long association with the site myself. And when I moved over, it really was because I was quite inspired really by the vision for the site. It's obviously the largest brownfield site in the southwest. It's very close to where I live, so I'm very passionate about it, and hopefully be able to share that with you this evening. So I shall, bear with me, share my screen again. Hopefully you can all see that. I'll get my little annotation thing highlight going. Is that working? So hopefully you can see that. So yes, this is hopefully the dullest slide of the evening. But what I'll do is I'll just run through a little bit about YTL itself and take you through exactly what is happening on site right now, and in particular what's planned for development over the next 2 to 3 years, because it is quite a programme of delivery that we have. And then after that, I will introduce you to our new vision for the site. And just to put it in a bit of context, you're probably all aware that we already have an outline planning permission that we secured back in 2018 for 2,675 homes, safeguarded 24 hectares of employment land that we forecast could achieve about 10,000 jobs, with a host of other sort of community, retail and other mixed use uses. And now what we're looking to do with our new vision is to significantly uplift that level of development. So we will be putting in a planning application about this time next week. So this is a very timely presentation for up to 6,500 homes, and enough sort of commercial floor space, we think, that can deliver more like 30,000 jobs. So it's a very big change, but there's a long story behind it. It's been evolving for many years, and I'll try and take you through that. So yes, it's a new vision, but a lot of it is already in place, and we've secured through various amendments to the master plan already. So I shall take you through all of that. A bit of background. So who is YTL? YTL is a Malaysian business. It is entirely family owned. It started in 1955 set up by the father, if you like, and is now operated entirely by the two sons of the business, Data Hong and Data Mark. Data Mark principally heads up the hotel side of the business, and if you're ever so inclined, do look it up, because they've got a huge global sort of boutique luxury hotel sort of line all through the world, so it's pretty impressive. But then Data Hong tends to govern all the other businesses, including ours, which is obviously in development. The business started in the cement manufacturing world, but is obviously broadened to cover many different disciplines. But it remains the case that it's a family-owned business. In the UK, there's quite a southwest focus, and principally that's because their main entry into the UK was back in 2002, when the business bought Wessex Water. So it's been running that very successfully for the last 20 years. And through the connections there, and people like Colin Skellett, who I'm sure a lot of you all know, they've acquired a number of hotels in the area. So they own the Gainsborough in Bath. They operate the Therme Bath Spa, and we've got hotels in London and Edinburgh as well. It also owns this Geneco business, which is organic waste and renewable energy, and of course is now branched out into development. And really it's that connection to Wessex Water and Colin that really fostered that interest in the former Filton airfield back in 2015. So that's really where that whole sort of local connection comes from. So I won't labour on this, because I'm sure you all do know precisely where the airfield is, in the north fringe of Bristol. It's just on the very edge of the North Bristol city boundary, sitting within South Gloucestershire. It's always a tricky one, really, because you know, North Fringe is often associated with suburban development, but in many respects that couldn't be further from the truth. Huge employment area in its own right. 30,000 people employed at the BAE and Airbus employment area. Southmead Hospital just down the road. The Mall, obviously, with 12 million visitors, and this real sort of emergence of Junction 17 as a leisure hub. That's obviously going to be fostered by the Wild Place and Bristol Zoo moving up to Wild Place over the next couple of years, with up to some 100,000 visitors a year. And of course there's things like the Wave just to the north, with ever sort of growing popularity. And then back to the employment, Aztec West and the Almondsbury Business Park, and the Bristol Business Park and UE and the MOD along the ring road there. So, you know, Brabazon is very much at the heart of all of that. And so, you know, we don't see it as suburbia. We see it as a location that is very much capable of delivering high density development. And that's what we intend to do. I should give you a glimpse of the next slide. But it's always a good one to start with, this one, because it just shows you the sheer scale of the airfield. Conscious that some of you have actually visited and driven up and down it yourselves. But it's a good one, this, because obviously that's an overlay of the airfield onto Bristol City. So you can almost see sort of Temple Meads on the far right, Queen's Square, you can just about make out, and then the entirety of Harbourside leading to Ashton Court represents the sheer scale of the opportunity at the airfield. And then the one underneath that is a similar example, but this time in London. So huge opportunity, big blank canvas that we have. It's you know, historically it's actually created quite a divide between this particular part of the North Fringe. Very hard to you know, you absolutely have to get around the site rather than across it. So you know, we've got lots of opportunity over the next couple of years to really open it up and get movement across it for the first time in an awful long time. So moving on to the sort of next part of the presentation, exactly what is coming forward in the next 2 to 3 years. And I guess the main one to start with is, of course, the arena. We secured consent for the arena only last year, actually, albeit it was sort of reported and approved at committee in 2020, just before lockdown. So yeah, I mean, it's where are we at with it, I suppose, is the question. We are on course to open the arena in 2024, probably towards the end of 2024, in truth. That planning permission has over 60 conditions attached to it, and a lot of them are pretty complex conditions, a lot of them working around the transport strategy that we've now got to sort of resolve in detail over the course of this year. But demolition will be starting in the summer, so there's a lot of sort of external outbuildings that need to come down. We've obviously got to strip out the internal parts of the hangars, so that's and then construction proper, if you like, will start in the autumn. So then there's a sort of 2-year build program from there on. So what is it? You all know this, I'm sure, but it's more than just an arena. The arena is just in that central hangar, and if you're not entirely sure where the hangars are, I'll point them out on in a moment. But the arena is the central hangar, 17,000 capacity at its sort of full extent. But then at the east and west hangars, on the east there we have what we call Festival Hall, which is going to be a big sort of exhibition space. And then on the west is the west hangar, which is a bit of a work in progress, if I'm honest with you. We've got a sort of multi-use consent for that hub. Lots of ideas coming forward for what it can do, but in some ways it's constrained by the arena use, because obviously there's huge security issues associated with the arena. There is only one access to it, which is what's right in front of you, which is the bridge over the railway line from the airfield. So you know, whatever goes on in there has to relate to the arena, but I'll show you some of the visionary images for it. So just flicking through what the arena kind of looks like, that's it in sort of full 17,000 capacity mode, with the stage at the back there. You will walk in from the airfield on the sort of left-hand side of the image, so the stage is always accessed from the rear of the hangars. So that's it in full concert mode. And this is called sport mode. So you've seen sort of pretty much like the O2 where they have all the tennis tournaments. That's almost looking at it from the stage side. And then we've got this in the round mode where you might have, say, boxing, for example. And what you see there towards the back is where the stage normally is. That's all kind of retractable. We can replace it with sort of temporary seating there to create an amazing atmosphere. So then this is what Festival Hall might look like, big exhibition space. If I'm brutally honest with you, that 2024 opening date really is related to the arena itself, the central hangar. It's all hands on deck to deliver that in time. So it's probably both the east and west hangars will follow on after that, but hopefully hotly in pursuit. So that's the east hangar. And then this is a sort of vision for the West Hangar, which is exactly that sort of multi-use, multi-hub, restaurants, sort of co-working type space. Lots of opportunities that we're exploring for what it could be in time. Very exciting, of course, very ambitious plans, but yeah, delivery. There is a dedicated arena team within YTL, but I'm working with them on that sort of condition discharge information, because a lot of it then relates back to what's going on the airfield. So that's the arena. Moving on to the airfield itself, in terms of what's happening on site right now that you can see if you do drive by, is delivery of our phase 1 residential scheme, which we've called the Hangar District. And that's a CGI prepared a few years ago of how we visioned the Hangar District. Got reserve matters consent for 302 units. Well underway with construction now. We've got about 50 completions, probably about 40 occupations. The first sort of household moving in was June last year, I think. So yeah, it's emerging out of the ground. And just to show, you know, are we true to our word in terms of taking the vision for what it should look like to what it actually looked like on the ground. This is a drone shot from summer last year, where you can really see that crescent shape starting to take shape. Two sort of blocks of flats in the north of the image there, and what you can see, oh, my little cursor's not performing, but oh, there it is. That's the one major listed building on site, which is called Hangar 16U. That's associated with the other hangars that exist within the Aerospace Museum complex, just to the right here. So this is Hayes Way running across the top of the image, and the Ford garage there. So there it is from a drone shot. That listed hangar is very important to this first phase of residential development. We're looking to actually bring it forward sooner rather than later as a community use. It kind of lends itself quite well to a community building. We've got an existing Section 106 requirement for a multi-use community building, including library, GP surgery. So hoping that we can bring forward that very soon, which, you know, is quite unusual for a development of this nature, where actually the 106 doesn't require this building until 2,500 homes are built across CPNN, Cribs Patchway New Neighbourhood as a whole. So it's kind of testament to, again, YTL's way of doing things slightly differently. And what does that look like on the ground? Well, you know, again, trying to do things differently. You know, we've got an awful lot of homes to build, but we don't really see ourselves as a volume house builder. You know, everything that we do is bespoke to the Brabazon scheme. You can see there, that's our completed first sort of row of houses that have that sort of nod to the aerospace, with that sort of wingtip design to the roofscape. But that's partly the nod to the heritage, but then, as you can imagine, all those units are the roofs at least are south facing to capture that solar gain. All the properties have solar panels. You can see there on the left, we've got a lot of properties that have double height ceiling, so to create a really impressive living space. That's the end of that crescent shape that you saw earlier. Again, sort of emphasis on high quality bricks, some nice detailing there at the tops and through the entrances to the main sort of front doors. That's our sales complex on the right hand side, so you are very welcome to pop along, have a look at the show home. You can see our sort of advanced landscaping, And everything is done with a purpose. You know, a lot of estates have issues with parking and cars parked all over the streets and sort of cluttering up the neighbourhoods, difficulty getting refuse lorries through and all of that. But by planting, having sort of high quality landscape, we rather hope that cars will be less inclined to mount the curb and park with, not unlawfully, but unhelpfully, if you like. So then that's a quick image of our show home. Big windows, that's a key feature of what we do. They're all sort of A-rated properties. So yeah, we're very proud of it. Sales are going extremely well, I have to say. One of our challenges actually as YTL, as a growing construction business in the UK, is to deliver quicker, quite frankly. In every single respect, and I'll try and come on to that, but you know, we are conscious that the airfield has been closed since 2012, and thus far all you see is 50 odd completions. So we've got an awful lot of ground to catch up on, and that's really why we want to kickstart things over the next couple of years or so. And this image coming up is an interesting one because it shows exactly what we are going to be delivering over the next 3 years or so. So what you see there is just the eastern part of the site. Just move this a second. So yeah, what you see there is the eastern half, sort of the halfway mark is this north-south link through the site. We've given the eastern framework, as we call it, an awful lot of focus in the last couple of years, because you can see the Brabazon hangar complex here. There's your arena just to the south of the site, other side of the railway line. Just to get your bearings, that's the A38 running north to south. That's the Royal Mail depot. You've got Hayes Way running across the top. That's just the corner of the Mall at Cribbs Causeway, and then the Charlton Hayes development to the north. And there's the Concord Museum just in there. So there's gives you your bearings, and then everything that you see in red, I suppose, is everything that we intend to deliver over the next 2 to 3 years. A lot of that is driven by the arena. All this infrastructure needs to be in place to enable the arena to open. But actually, it's all very timely because a lot of this infrastructure falls in line with our legal obligations under the existing consent to deliver a Metrobus route through the site, which is going to be this route running east to west, is what we call Runway Avenue. It doesn't actually run along the runway itself. We can't use the runway in any shape or form. It's so thick, the concrete, that we can't actually reuse it because we can't get any services under it. So we do have to dig up the entirety of the runway. But we can use every single bit of that concrete elsewhere on site to bring the levels up, and so nothing leaves the site. So the Metrobus is a key driver that runs east to west. There'll be 3 Metrobus stops, one just as you come in off the A38, another one close to our new park and accessible to the railway station, and then another one over here just as you leave the site onto the San Andreas roundabout. So that's everything that you see there should be delivered by the end of 2024 to facilitate that arena opening. I'll come on to some of the detail of that in the next couple of slides. But again, what you see just here that I'm circling is our phase 1 residential development, well underway. There's that crescent shape, accessible off what is called Blenheim roundabout. Then what we'll be doing in the summer is bringing forward our phase 2 residential development, which is this sort of purple area here. So reserved matters under the existing outline will be coming in for that in the summer. to enable that sort of continuity of delivery. Then you'll see the railway station down at the bottom there. I'll come on to the proposals for that, but that should be operational by the end of 2023. Talk about the details of that in a sec. And equally, our big Brabazon Park that I'll come on to, that is another huge element of infrastructure that we intend to deliver for arena opening. Altogether, that infrastructure alone is adds up to about £60 million worth of investment from YTL. And you know, when you think about it, yes, we do need it for arena opening for sure, but against the backdrop of by 2024 sort of 300 odd completions, that's a huge investment in the site that, you know, I hope you might agree, you know, you don't often see on other sort of residential led estates. So again, trying to do things different, pump priming the site. When we put that infrastructure in, obviously what it's going to do is open up that eastern framework hugely to allow us to really market all the commercial space kind of adjacent to the A38 there, and really get things moving. That's really the key driver there. So what do some of those bits of infrastructure look like? Well, not the most exciting one, but important, which is the new A38 junction. So this is going to be our principal new access from the A38. I'll show you this, the sort of Google map on the right hand side of the image, because that's where the Metro bus will be coming. You'll have seen all those works to Gypsy Patch Lane and the bridge going in. The new Metro bus route will come through Gypsy Patch Lane, under the bridge, and then through the Horizon 38 development, and then run straight across the A38 into Brabazon. So straight across here. Big old junction that. It's you know, heavily signalised junction, multi movement, left, right, straight across. So that work will begin. Work has effectively begun on it already, but in earnest next month. So as we hate to say, a fair bit of disruption on the A38 there through the course of this year, but it's vital we deliver that, because we've got to deliver that Metro bus route so that it's operational by this time next year. So Metro bus running through the site by March next year. So that's the junction. Then the station, Network Rail and WECA have submitted the planning application to South Gloucestershire back in October last year. That's a vision for how we see it looking, with the sort of Brabazon to the top of the image, Brabazon hangers to the left. I'll show you another one in a minute. But essentially, it's a very simple application right now. It's just the platforms and the bridge. But the bridge itself is quite a funky bridge, if you like. It's called a Futura bridge. It's a prototype from the National Composite Centre. So very excited to be delivering a new bridge for what is called North Filton Station, but hopefully in time will become known as Brabazon. You can see the hangars in the background there, the arena. So not too far to walk from the station to the arena. Then Brabazon Park. Again, really unusual, I tend to think, but we want to deliver this park by 2024. We have submitted reserve matters under the existing outline just before Christmas. The image on your right there is that reserve matters submission. Very exciting. It is we believe the largest park to be built in the southwest since Castle Park post-war. Huge undertaking. A lot of thought has been gone into the design, but again, you know, quite unusual for a developer to be delivering some open space of this scale quite so early in the evolution of the scheme. But very exciting nonetheless. Big focus on not just green infrastructure, but blue infrastructure in the shape of that lake. That is a permanent lake. It does serve as a drainage feature, but it's a permanent water body. So a lot going on site over the next 2 to 3 years. And a lot of that is wrapped around our new vision. So a lot happening, but then a lot of change on the horizon too. Before I sort of talk to you about how that vision is shaping up, it's quite important just to reflect on the existing context. So as we probably all know, the Brabazon site forms part of the Cribs Patchway new neighbourhood. That's allocated in the South Gloss core strategy for 5,700 homes, of which we've got consent for just over 2,500. Persimmon control Fishpool Hill, they've got a consent for 1,100 homes, and Taylor Wimpey and Bellway own the land sort of opposite Dick Lovett. It's called Horwood, and if you've ever driven by recently, a lot of work's going on there, and they've got consent for 1,000 homes. So when you add it all together, there's consent for just over 4,700. So there's this missing 1,000 homes from the allocation. And when the allocation was made, South Gloucestershire thought that that 1,000 homes could come forward at the Patchway Trading Estate. This is back 10 years ago now. Of course, the Patchway Trading Estate continues to be quite a prosperous estate. Our offices are located on it, and really there's no prospect of those 1,000 homes coming forward anytime soon. So what we think we can do is to take those 1,000 homes and integrate them at Brabazon. That's really beneficial in lots of ways, because within that CPNN, there's a framework agreement between all the developers and the council that delivers a £145 million package of works. £75 million goes on transport, highway improvements and public transport improvements, including that Metrobus route, opening of the rail station, and a whole host of other investments in the strategic road network. Each development pays a roof tax towards that, so Brabazon pays about £16,000 per unit. But of course, if the Patchway Trading Estate development didn't come forward, then there's a big gap in that funding that South Gloucestershire is obliged to fulfil. So by us taking it onto Brabazon and paying that proportion of the roof tax, it's going to make a big difference to ensuring that that infrastructure does come forward. So, you know, what I say to people when they start to worry about the transport implications of this uplifting development is to say, well, yes, we do appreciate your concerns, but actually just think about it in terms of we effectively have consent for 3,500 homes already. That has a complete mitigation strategy associated with it. That's £75 million, makes that work perfectly well. That is probably a good 15 years worth of development at Brabazon. You know, this is a very long-term development for YTL, probably taking over 25 years in truth. So, you know, don't worry, dare I say, in effect, because, you know, before there's a problem only in about 15 years' time. And we do have a solution for how to resolve that problem, which I'll come on to. So, again, before I come on to it, it's important to say, well, hang on a minute, you know, YTL, you only secured consent back in 2018 for 2,500. Now you want to come forward with 6,500 homes and a huge number of increase in jobs. You know, what's changed? Well, quite a lot, actually, in those 3 years. The big one is the arena. We've already had to change the master plan quite significantly to accommodate it, just in terms of the transport strategy. I'll flick onto the next slide very quickly, but that is our emerging strategy for the arena. It's hugely complex. We're sorting out all these conditions through the course of this year. But, you know, we've got to accommodate 1,500 car park spaces across 3 multi-storey car parks. When you think about it, 1,500 car park spaces for a 17,000 capacity arena, you know, the vast majority of people are going to be coming by public transport. So by rail, Metrobus, shuttle bus from the city centre, park and ride locations, and so on and so forth, local buses, cycling, you name it. We've got to integrate that parking strategy into the master plan. And it's a hugely complex thing to do. So we've had to rethink things anyway. We already have done that. But of course, the arena presents a huge commercial opportunity too. Like I said, those 17,000 people are all going to have to come through the airfields to access the arena. So huge opportunity there for us to turn what is a fairly inward-looking site into a real destination, and that changes things markedly. Local regional policy. Well, you all know what pressure WECA is under, constant delays to their spatial development strategy, not least because the pressure for growth is unrelenting. Brabazon can't answer all those questions, but it is the largest brownfield site in the area. It's a duty on us to make sure it delivers more. We really think it can, as do the councils, quite honestly. So we've got a supportive position from both Bristol and South Gloss to try and deliver more. Won't reduce it, but there will be or won't solve it, but at least there'll be a bit less pressure on our green fields and green belt. Time will tell. COVID, what do we mean by that? Well, I think it's just what we've all learned through COVID is how important high quality green infrastructure is. It's part of the reason why we've brought in the lake, so that there's that sort of emphasis on mindfulness within a very busy location. And then site progression. Well, I think we've learned through our phase 1 development just how much demand there is for apartment living. And of course, with higher density development comes a greater predominance of apartments over houses. So when we look at 6,500 homes, it's probably near enough 4,800 of those are apartments, and the balance is houses. So big change for the area, but one we think is capable of delivery over time. So that's enough of the lead up. The next slide is an illustration of how we think that vision starts to shape up. So again, just to help you get your bearings, you got the A38 running across the top of the slide, hangars in the background. There's our first phase of residential development, phase 2 here, and Hayesway running across the bottom there. Lot to go through there, but you know, it is a vision for how we see high density living at Brabazon. Again, this is only the eastern part of the site, only half of the site that you can see there, but it is our high density core. Naturally close to the rail station, which is here, but this is our major sort of urban core, and depending on how you look at it, I don't think it's that scary when you think, you know, a lot of local people think it's going to be high-rise development. Yes, there is, but it's not a predominance of that. It's quite focused, and the Western framework will be a lot lower density than what you see here. But Brabazon Park, loud and proud in the centre of the image there. Our Runway Avenue Metrobus route running straight through. But you know, the master plan will deliver exactly what it's already got consent for, which is 3 new schools, 2 primary, 1 secondary, 6,500 homes with higher density development and more commercial floor space, further uses as well in terms of further education. We think we can deliver up to 30,000 new jobs, loads of community facilities, all enshrined within this concept of a 15-minute neighbourhood, where wherever you happen to be on site, you should be able to access either on foot or cycle all the amenities you need within a 15-minute duration. So an exciting image there, just to show you a few more. That's an image on the left there from within the park, looking across that lake to Brabazon Hangers, a sort of major sort of mixed use area on the left there with lots of restaurants, bars. A lot of the arena pedestrians will be funneled through the park. So, you know, you can see where we're coming from in terms of the commercial offering. Lots of active ground floor uses, the lake there. And then on the right hand side is what we call City Green. Again, it's where a lot of the pedestrian movements will be funneled through to access all the public transport nodes. Exciting space there. And then, you know, again, that's a vision for what we think on the left there, the rail station could look like in time. Transport is the key of everything we do at Brabazon. Huge areas of segregated cycle routes, pedestrian routes, a lot of them completely free of the car. So pedestrian, and you know, a bit like the Ramblas in Barcelona, we liken it to. But you know, it's a hugely important part of our strategy, and it's how we will deliver that maximum number of homes. Again, on the right, that's another sort of view of the entrance into our City Green. So that's again coming off the steps from the arena, and that's where you're moving through to City Green. Put it all together, that's what you've got. That's our illustrative master plan. A lot going on there, but you know, in terms of what you've seen already, that's the Eastern framework. You haven't seen much of the West, but that's kind of how we look at it. That's our big secondary school in the centre of the image there, with all the sports pitches. Another primary school down here, another one here, and then all the mixed use area kind of focused in this eastern part of the site. So that's how it's starting to come together. But you know, the obvious question is, goodness me, you know, it's bad enough on the A38, it's bad enough at the motorway junctions. How on earth are we going to get this uplift in development? Well, we've got a phased approach, and it's across these 4 phases that we talk about. And phase 1 is what I spoke about earlier, the consented level of development that really is already has that mitigation strategy evolved for it. Rail station, Metrobus, all the other mitigation that we're contributing towards. How do we get beyond that? Well, truth be told, if we introduce more vehicle trips onto the network, then very quickly it does get to a point where congestion is rife, and we can't really demonstrate how it's going to work. The only way that it does work is through modal shift onto public transport. And you know, a lot of local people think that might be a bit sort of pie in the sky, thinking, you know, how do you get people onto public transport? Well, we kind of say in return, you know, if we can't make it work with Brabazon, as connected as it is, where can we? And in many respects, it's not that much of a leap. So to get to our what we call our transport phase 2, which is an additional 1,000 homes and further commercial floor space, it doesn't really require very much. When that rail station opens next year, there's only going to be 1 service an hour. We only need it to get to 2 or 3 to get onto our next phase. That can only really come through with more development. You know, with that critical mass of population, then it's reasonable to anticipate that we can get that service upgrade. Exactly the same with the Metrobus. So it's not a huge leap to get from phase 1 to phase 2. Phase 3, phase 4, well, you know, we start to get into where we're going to be in 20 years' time. It may require something like the Bristol Mass Rapid Transit. And again, you know, a lot of people roll their eyes at that. 30 years in the making, and we haven't got very far so far. But you know, this is 20 years away. There's a lot of momentum now building behind it, lots of momentum as to the city centre up to Cribs being the first sort of line, if you like, first phase of mass rapid transit, and it would naturally come through the site. So, you know, we need our commitment through this planning application is to say we will not introduce any more vehicle trips onto the network than already has consent, despite the fact we're delivering an extra 3,000 odd homes. So yeah, it's a complex strategy, big transport assessment coming in with the application next week. I'm conscious of time and I'm sort of droning on, but we can come back to it if there are any questions. But that is central to our philosophy, why we're introducing all those pedestrian routes, all those Metrobus stops. Everything is centered around modal shift and getting people out of the car. That's how we're designing the properties. Parking standards will reduce over time. We can't do that right now. That first phase of residential development has your standard 2 car parking spaces for each house. But over time, as the public transport improves, we can slowly reduce the parking. And people buying a property on Brabazon have to buy into that concept of modal shift, that not all properties are going to have a car parking space. And through design, we need to deter people from parking on the street. So, you know, it's a complex strategy, but one that over time, over a 25-year period, we think is deliverable. And that is in line with South Gloucestershire's emerging policy position. So all quite complex, and I'm kind of racing through because I'm conscious of time, but that is our promise. No additional trips onto the network than what we've already got consent for. Just a little note on timeline. Like I said, we are submitting the new outline planning application next week, so keep an eye out for that. We've done an awful lot of pre-app work with the local community and the councils, so they know what's coming. Depending on how you look at it, it could be a relatively straightforward Section 106 agreement, because, you know, the way to look at it is we can't solve all these problems. To deliver that number of homes and that amount of commercial floor space does need sort of strategic levels of investment. We can't make that mass rapid transit happen. It needs central government funding. You know, everything that WECA is going to be doing over the next 5 to 10 years to try and make it happen, we need to ride off the back of it in essence. But that's partly why we're coming forward with it now. We need to get that consent in place. We need, alongside WECA, South Gloss and Bristol, to demonstrate that growth agenda to try and facilitate that ability to access those funds. In an ideal world, we'll have a consent by the end of the year. That's hugely ambitious. We know that. We've got a planning performance agreement with the council. So time will tell. Time will tell. But I'm conscious of time. That does take me to the end of the presentation. I've kind of skated through that transport section. So if you do have any queries on that or anything else, I'll be more than happy to address them.
Good.
I'll leave it open on that image because that's kind of the showstopper, if you like. But I can turn off sharing if you like, Simon. And
yeah, it's probably best. It's difficult to see who's asking questions.
Yeah, sure. I'll stop sharing.
Well, thank you very much for that. That was it's quite exciting, really. It's hugely ambitious, isn't it? But as you say, if you can't make modal shift work in a development like this, it won't work anywhere else, because the sort of scattered development with that quantum of development is likely to be much more car orientated. I did have a kick-off question, which I was interested in, was the linkages there are between Brabazon and Cribs, because actually there's a lot of shopping on Cribs of all sorts, Morrison's and everything else. I mean, how do people get from Brabazon to Cribs without using their cars?
Yeah, it's Cribs is what it is. It's a very car dominated development. Yeah, there are enough supermarkets in Cribs with Asda, Morrison's, and Marks, such that we probably don't need to, little close by, that we don't need to deliver any more on Brabazon. There's a lot of conversations going on with Baylis as to how we access through through their estate, and the ice rink location. Creating those pedestrian routes is really important. But yeah, we're not trying to compete with the Mall. Whatever we do in a retail sense will be very different. We're not into big box development at all. So yeah, if people do want that and need their cars, maybe they will drive across, which is disappointing. But there's lots of conversations going on with the Mall, partly to do with park and ride related to the arena, how we make their car parks work for everybody, for the whole area. But yeah, it is a challenge given it's such a car dominated development.
The other question I had was looking at the first phase that's on site at the moment. I mean, if you knew then what you know now, would that be much higher density? Would you actually like to knock that down and build something bigger there?
No, I mean, we don't lack land, let's say, so we haven't missed a trick, I don't think. And I think that is part of the messaging, Simon, that we can't create this high density development overnight. We can't just build flats that have no parking because people won't buy them. There is still a reliance on the car at the moment. However, with the delivery of the Metro bus route, with the delivery of the rail station, and as we start to bring forward our urban quarter, which is the next big part of the development, people's mindset about what Brabazon should be delivering right then will change, and we're looking at build to rent models, you name it, meanwhile housing, such that we can ramp up that density. So no, I don't think we've missed a trick at all. I think we're very proud of that development. Phase 2 will look a lot like it, if I'm honest. So no, plenty of scope to deliver what we want to.
Good. We've got a few questions on chat. I don't know whether you can see chat. They go from the very prosaic to quite ambitious ones. The first one is, will there be public toilets leading to the arena? I'm sure there will be.
It's a very good question. You would not believe how much discussion there has been internally on public toilets and where they should be located.
Good.
Difficult one, isn't it? Because we don't want it to become an area for antisocial behaviour. So within the park, we're actually quite reluctant to provide permanent facilities. What we hope is that we can provide public toilets within buildings over time, so that hopefully we only need to deliver some temporary facilities for the time being until the buildings come along.
Peter Heaven, you've got a question. Actually, it's on chat as well. So do you want to go ahead with it?
Yes, thank you. First of all, you're saying about lack of public toilets. I mean, friends of mine have got diabetes, and the fact that toilets are closed down in Bristol is absolutely appalling, because it means they can't go very far. They have to plan their route to know that a toilet's going to be available when they need it. Public toilets need to be reopened, not closed. And you're saying you're going to limit them. That's appalling. The second thing is that if you're going to go shopping at Morrison's, for example, which I do, you need a car to get there and back. You cannot rely on public transport or a bicycle because you've got so much shopping. And even if you use a bus, you still got to take it from the bus stop to home. And a lot of the stuff is so heavy, you can't do it. And please don't say you get them to deliver. We've tried it and it doesn't work because they haven't got what you want. They won't provide you with the right sort of alternatives. They don't look at the expiry dates when they put the stuff together. They just pick the first one off the shelf. So if you ask for ready meals, you're likely to get a whole lot of them all expiring on the same date. It doesn't work. And when you live alone like I do, sometimes you don't get enough together to make the minimum order. So you have to have a car to get from home to the supermarket and back again. The other thing I would say is I'm totally unimpressed with the design of the houses you've got there, particularly that large sort of semicircular building. Everything looks the same. I'm just presuming that when people move in, they'll paint their front wall a different colour, like Clifton Wood, to break it up. It's like living in a pigeonhole. Have you actually looked at the sort of mental effect it'll have on people?
Right.
Yeah.
Simon.
See, not necessarily a fan. I get that. Not everybody is. I can't really comment on the sort of architecture. You know, each to their own. That's your opinion. You're absolutely entitled to it. I personally wouldn't agree with you. And there seems to be huge demand for the product that we're delivering. Public toilets, I didn't say there would be a lack of them. Like I said, with our arena transport strategy, we've got to make sure it's a highly attractive destination for those 17,000 people. There will be plenty of queuing to get back on the buses. We need to make sure they are provided with all the facilities they need. It's just about how we design them, quite frankly. So it's not, there won't be a shortage, that's for certain. I hear you, what you say about supermarkets, and you won't thank me clearly for saying about deliveries. But actually, that is how you do have to look at it. You have to think slightly long term about it. We are not naive at YTL. We do not imagine that people are going to be getting on trains, Metrobus, won't need their car to get to where they work and to get their supermarket shopping in over the next decade. That's what they'll do. However, over time, we need to buy into a vision that travel behaviour will change. We've seen it through COVID and the pandemic. We've seen through, you know, we interview people all the time, and you know, their first question is about flexible working. People will not tolerate anymore sitting in peak hour traffic for an hour to get 5 or 10 miles. Flexible working is everything. That AM and PM peak is spreading out. We obviously have working from home, and that will evolve hugely over the next 20 years, as will travel behaviour generally, how we shop when we choose to shop. And you might not enjoy what the supermarkets deliver today, but it's an emerging world, and in time, you know, they'll get their act together more and more, and it will become more of a thing of the future. I haven't had the time to talk to you about our concepts of micro mobility hubs and how we see that last mile trip being hugely important to making Brabazon work. We have these micro mobility hubs, last mile logistics centres, so that actually there is scope to radically improve how we move about. But that won't happen overnight. No one at YTL is naive enough to think it will.
I've got a question on here, Simon, about the arena, and it was said to be open 365 days a year. Does that mean it will be open every day regardless of what's on there? Or how does the arena actually operate on a day-to-day basis?
The arena itself, probably not, Simon, no. There's certainly not that, but it's not a, there aren't events happening daily. I forget what the numbers are, but I think it's about 140 events during the year of varying size. So of those big 17,000 mega events, I think I'll get you the right figure, but it's probably about 12 to 15 in a year. So no, I think the 365 is probably the other hangars. So the exhibition space and the Western sort of hub location is going to be operational throughout.
Yeah. It's hugely ambitious to have big events every day, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I can't really imagine that. The other question was, will the railway station's name definitely be Brabazon, or is that just a working title?
It's a working title, one that we're pushing hard for, because, you know, we want Brabazon to be a real destination, people to know where Brabazon is. You know, it's not just a sort of brand name, it's a place name. So, you know, we'll see, but that's an aspiration.
And can it open before Henbury station is completed? Somebody's asked.
Yes, it can. Yes,
it can. Delays with Henbury, I don't.
Yeah, indeed, it can. Yeah, I think there's various options for turning and coming back before it gets to Henbury.
Yeah. I haven't got many other hands up at the moment. I mean, I think people looking pleased with this, amazed by it. well, unusual. I think a lot of people know quite a lot about it already, Simon. That's part of the issue. And, you know, we have been to see it. We've read a lot about it. We've seen the arena debate. I'm sure you're right. It's the only solution is to look at transport in the way you're talking about. I can't see a solution where everybody's having 2 cars and trying to drive on the roads to do everything. And it's going to take a long time to get to that situation. But if it doesn't work here, where will it work?
Well, that's it, Simon. And, you know, even if there was capacity on the network, it's not really our ambition to make it a car-borne community. Quite the opposite, really. I
can remember 2 or 3 years ago into presentations, I think from North Somerset, with new development out near Churchill and places like that, which were completely car-based, with no public transport, no facilities. And you thought, gosh, is that the future? You know, they were going to be built round about now. And I think everybody on the presentation felt very, very uneasy about it. Whereas this one, we feel uneasy in a different way, thinking, gosh, this is going to be such a different lifestyle, but actually, is there any alternative? Question on here about how does the green space per home compare to other cities? Gosh, that's a big question, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a big issue, and it's a big issue through the planning application because you know, South Gloucestershire have very suburban standards. So, you know, they have huge public open space requirements that actually, when you do the maths, simply cannot be delivered on a high density scheme. You know, if you have 100 dwellings per hectare, the entire site has to be given over to public open space. So, you know, it is a challenge for us. Private amenity as well as public amenity is very important. Yeah, what you see there, you know, is the Brabazon Park, but there is, you know, what we call Destination Park, which is the huge sports complex. And we, in the Western framework, we have this concept of linear parks running north to south, all of different sort of variety and form that will give everybody access to all the different typologies of open space that South Gloss have in terms of natural, semi-natural, children's play, sport, all within that 15-minute walk. But actually, it's very comparable to it vastly exceeds Bristol City standards. So if the boundary was shunted over and we were in Bristol City, we'd be way in excess of their standards.
The technical question here, is the bridge the only way to access the arena? If so, what happens if there's a problem with the bridge?
Well, it's the main route in, but obviously you can access it from the other side. So Charlton Road, there's the West Way. I'm looking at the screen, which you can't see. So yeah, it's easily accessible from the other side. It's just actually on event days, that is not where people will be directed at all, because obviously Charlton Road is a existing residential road. We can't be having people coming, but in terms of emergencies, we can easily filter out onto the south side.
I think you covered most of the questions on the chat. I don't know, has anybody else got anything they want to raise? No. You must have done a very good job here, Simon. We'll certainly look.
Blown away or bored to tears?
No, not at all. There's a couple of comments on there saying what an informative evening it's been, and you know, people drive past, they learn about it, and actually you've told everybody what's actually going to happen, which is good. Yeah, it's Tim there saying brilliant, thank you. So there you are. That sums it up for me, and Bob Jory as well. So thanks very much, Simon, for coming to talk to us. Perhaps we'll invite you back when we got to a next phase and see what's going on, or even a visit. So thank you very much, and thank you everybody for coming, and look forward to hearing more. So cheers, thank you for that, and good night.